However, the most compelling and persuasive portion of his prosecution is the deliberate way in which he characterizes Neaira negatively with respect to the way he addresses her during the trial. Hamill suggests that juries in the Athenian legal system might have been easily swayed by circumstances that lay outside the current trial. She mentions that a judgment in a previous case involving Stephanos and Apollodoros might have been affecting the decision in the case against Neaira. If Hamill believed that juries could have easily been persuaded given the right circumstances, I believe she should have done what Alison Glazebrook did. Glazebrook wrote an article entitled "The Making of a Prostitute, Apollodoros' Portrait of Neaira." In this article, Glazebrook takes an in-depth look at the Greek to see just what Apollodoros was saying to accomplish with his intentional language with respect to Neaira. She says that she was addressed hypothetically as an actual Hetaire, as if to say, this alleged Hetaire, and that suggests the implication was that Neaira was never even that, but just a common streetwalker. This is a small distinction to make, but however, an important one as it pertains to the jury's opinion of Neaira. Apollodoros doesn't stop there. Glazebrook references a couple more terms that Theomnestos and Apollodoros use to make it seem as if Neaira is less of a person, therefore making the jurors believe that she is just that. This would subsequently create emotion within the heart of the juror. This subhuman is trying to pass herself off as a citizen. For instance, Apollodoros routinely refers to Neaira as this Neaira here in the Greek. You can almost see him waving her off with his hand as he says, this Neaira here. He also goes on to use more descriptive words that are the equivalent of saying things such as women of such a character and unwomanly as a result of physical, moral, or legal characteristics. The most salacious term Apollodoros referred to Neaira as, however, was Neaira. Let me explain. Theomnestos and Apollodoros intentionally call Neaira by name because of its negative social consequences. A respectable woman of the day would not be caught dead out in public and away from the house, let alone be called by name in public. They would always make sure to say things like, she is a daughter, a sister, or the mother of Apollodoros' children. After saying these sorts of things, they would immediately call Neaira by name. This creates a vivid contrast in status and reputation between Neaira and respectable women. This works to further create an emotional response in the jury that isn't favorable to Neaira. Hamill fails to pick up on this very demonstrable illustration of the lengths to which Apollodoros was willing to go to win this case. But as Hamill successfully points out, he does want to win this case not to punish Neaira, but to punish Stephanos, which brings me to the feud between Stephanos and Apollodoros. This book takes a look at the life of Neaira through a man who has a long and documented history with her and her husband. Before Theomnestos brings Neaira before the court for claiming to be an Athenian when in fact she isn't, Stephanos had gotten, quote-unquote, stuck in the craw of Theomnestos' father-in-law, Apollodoros. It started when Stephanos had accused Apollodoros of proposing a law that was contradictory to a law that was already in place, having to do with the treasury and Philip II marching through Greece. Philip II, of course, the father of Alexander the Great. His conviction in the case left him in a financial bind and subject to lose his rights of citizenship. As one may imagine, this enraged Apollodoros. The second incident saw Stephanos dragging Apollodoros to court to defend himself against murder charges. So as you can see, there is an extensive history between these two men that helps to create this feud. Hamill points out that the case against Neaira is essentially revenge on the part of Apollodoros. She goes on to also point out that Athenians believe revenge to be an acceptable reason to bring someone to court. The catch being, in that case, that you may be labeled a sycophant and could lose your ability to bring suit against anybody in the future. By the way, sycophant was a term that had been applied to Stephanos at different times in his life. Anyway, this to me is the strongest chapter in the book because it gives the real reason Neaira had to suffer through this arduous process. The men were, in a sense, being stubborn asses. Which brings me to my final point and what I believe to be the worst part of the book. And I'm going to come right out and say it. I hated finding out right at the end that we don't know the result of the trial. I didn't know this beforehand, so it was probably more of a disappointment to me. As a reader who wanted to be entertained, it was anticlimactic, as I found it to be, having been pulled into a story and essentially feeling sorry for Neaira. As a scholar and reading this book for its educational value, I felt that it was a tactic that could have easily been used by a popular fiction writer. Knowing that fact in the beginning, I believe I could have paid more attention to some of the finer points of the law and civics that were being presented, and were actually very good. Not informing the reader until the end that we didn't know the outcome prevents us from providing as much of our attention to analyzing the facts as should have been the case. This is the problem, and in my opinion, the others that I mentioned, while effectual, are really sort of secondary. The way in which she decided to write the book did entertain you, but I felt it made it lackluster as an educational nonfiction book. As I close, I've told you I believe that Hamel's portrayal of Athenian prostitution was shallow and uneducational. I've told you I believe Hamel's failure to address Apollodorus' intentional language was a big mistake and left a huge hole in the overall narrative. I told you I thought her chapter on the feud between the two men was well done and very helpful, and that the end was essentially lackluster. Which might seem to be a harsh review, and I would agree with you. But let me say this, as a book read for entertainment purposes, as I believed it in part to be, it was pretty good. As a book read for strictly academic purposes, which is most likely, I think it could have been written a little more completely. However, it is a good book that helps you to understand more about the ancient Athenian courts and a woman's place in Athenian society, which is information that today is at a premium. I do want to end, just as Hamel ended her book, with the wish that Neaira was able to give Stephanos hell for involving her in such a mess in the first place. Thank you.